Hello everyone, so this is the first session of our oil painting. Now I'm using an art painting board, so it's quite stiff. You can see it's got a little bit of grain on there. They're lovely because you can mount them afterwards and put them in a frame, but they're also good just for sketches. So we're also doing this portrait, so this is the oil painting one, and I'm just going to quickly start by having a little bit of an edge on here, just so when the paint's finished, it's nice and crisp. So I'm just going to quickly go around here. I've already got fingerprints on mine, which is quite normal. So if you ever buy anything of mine, the chances are it's not got a crisp white edge, it's got fingerprints everywhere. So we're going to do this in 3 stages because oil takes a little while to dry. It can take a few days between each stage, but patience is definitely worth it. So we're going to do this one in a couple of layers. So this is our final bit of tape here, like so. So I've got 3 brushes that I'm going to use. I've got a cloth, which always comes in handy, because we don't tend to clean our brushes. What we tend to do is just wipe it off. Wipe the paint off. So we're going to start off with a sap green, and you just get a little bit on your brush there, and we're doing this kind of tree skyline. So the first thing that I do is kind of work out where that's going to go. It doesn't have to be mega straight. If your paint is very dry, you can add a little bit of terps, but the beauty of oil is that it just spreads and spreads and spreads. So we'll just start off so we know where that is. I'm not going to worry about that bit for now. So the sky, just going to wipe that off there. I've got a cobalt blue or an ultramarine blue, you can use either. And I start at the top of the sky. Now when it comes to brush strokes, I've got a firm hold of my brush right now. So what I'm doing is I'm getting it on the canvas just for now, like so. I'm going to add a tiny little bit of terps just to loosen it up a little bit. And the whole top of this sky, we're going to cover it in this ultramarine blue or cobalt blue, whichever one you're using. So you can see how much the terps thins it out. So I always like to add a little bit more, so you can't see your brush strokes so much. And then as you come down, you can see the direction that I'm using my brush. I'll come down and then I'll start being a little bit more sparse. So I haven't got very much paint on here. I'm just going to put it on a little bit. And then with the grey, I'm just going to wipe that off there. With the grey, I've got quite a bit on there. I'm going to just start to add it to the blue up here. I'm kind of almost tapping it on. I'm just going to fill that area in there with grey. Like so. And then I'm going to kind of move that around a little bit. So you've got these 2 sections. If you take all the paint off your brush, so your brush is quite dry, if you just lightly skim over it like so, it sort of very gently blends it. I like to go in lots of different directions. What you don't want to do is do everything in a kind of diagonal way. So you just blend all of that in. And the grey is just going to soften the blue. Take it up to the top. And then the same with this layer down here. So it's almost like a sort of a gentle cloud effect down to there. And then I'm going to add a bit more grey on this next layer. And all the time I'm crisscrossing, like so. So use a little bit of paint at a time. You just keep adding it on. You're better off doing that than putting lots and lots on there and then spending ages and ages trying to sort of blend it in. So when we get down to this stage here, this is where we're going to have our sunset. So rather than do blue all the way down, I have got my next colour here, which is Magenta. And I'm just going to put a little bit on my palette. So this is going to look very dark, but when we come to paint over it, when it's dry, we're going to put the other colours in. We're going to put oranges and light pinks, and so this is kind of the sunset. We're not going to go all the way down to the bottom, so this is kind of put on in a sweeping motion, like so. And then we're going to add a bit more grey. You can add white, but the grey just softens it rather than lightens it. So a bit of grey in here, a little bit more. It's a bit like a kind of a cake recipe. You've just got to kind of add a little bit at a time. And then I'm going to use the grey just to bring these two bits together. So I'm taking a bit of pink up, and we bring a little bit of the blue down. And the brush strokes here is what kind of makes the kind of marks make what we want to see. So again, get the paint on, like so, and then just work it in. It's all right if you have a little bit of paint on your brush and the magenta comes up here. That's what we like. And you see, the more you go over it, the more it softens. Just keep going over it and over it. So you've got this lovely sort of rich dark blue at the top. And then the bit at the bottom, we're going to go back to a little bit of blue. So again, the magic grey comes in down here. Just put a very thin line of grey in there. And then just a tiny little bit of blue. So you can see how much is on my brush, it's just a tiny little bit. And then we're just going to mix those two in. A little bit more grey. So if you're doing this in acrylic, it'll be dry in an hour or so, which is really handy. This might take a couple of hours, might take a couple of days, depends how warm your room is that you've got it in. So we'll get it down to the horizon there. Then when we're down right at the very bottom, we're just going to add a little bit of white. A bit of white on my brush there, just in this corner here. You just tap it into the colour so it just blends in. And then we're just going to use like that sweeping motion up there. And then we're going to take this all off our brush. We're not washing it, we're just wiping it. And then the whole brush sweeps up and across. You end up with this lovely sweeping motion. So I'm going to add a little bit of white in here now in the grey. So if you put a few marks on, the beauty of these flat brushes is that you end up with these lovely kind of big flat marks. Just a tiny bit at a time. You can come right down into the pink. It just adds a little bit of movement. Wipe everything off your brush and then again just sweep it over. And it just adds a little bit of extra movement in there. And you keep sweeping till you get down to the bottom. And then the sap green at the bottom, we're just going to fill this bit in so it's nice and dark. Right over where your masking tape is. Like so. I'm going to add a tiny little bit of terps to mine, just because my oil paint is so dry. Right over there. So you can go up and then across. It just adds a nice texture. So that's the first step of our oil painting. So we're going to let that dry. If I put too much in now, it would just basically all blend in together, and we want kind of nice, crisp colours. So that's how we're going to do it. So there you go, that's stage one of your oil painting.